So there's been this announcement. Let me reset here. Hold on a second. All right. So last week, Wizards announced a big change to MTG Arena for this fall that everybody is talking about. It is the classic format. It is going to be a curated format in which basically rotated cards, so cards that have rotated out of standard will be legal, and a subset of cards that they are going to add to Arena based on what R&D wants to do with this as a format. I think that's pretty interesting. Sounds fun. Like, I like modern. I like the idea of building towards a modern style eternal format on Arena, but they have made a very controversial decision and people are not happy. And I wanted to talk about that again. Wujo, are you still here? Wujo made a comment on my one of my videos where I was talking about this and kind of called me out a little for, I don't want to put words in your mouth. People can go look at the comment or I could bring it up. But basically, you know, when it comes to these types of changes, I try to simmer everybody down. And sometimes that can be taken the wrong way, like that I'm trying to defend WotC's decisions as always justifiable or good or whatever, and that's not what I'm trying to do. And I just want to clarify where I'm at on this whole classic format system, because the big controversial addition to this that Wizards announced was that wildcards, to craft a rotated card from wildcards will require double wildcards. So right now, if you want to have that Lyra, Dawnbringer, or, you know, some mythic from Dominaria or whatever, your favorite Dominaria mythic, you don't have four of them yet. They're saying right now, the current plan is once Dominaria rotates, if you want to get a mythic from Dominaria, it's going to cost you 2 mythic wildcards instead of 1. Obviously, people don't like this. I don't like that. I want to be clear about that. That's the main thing. Like, I don't like that. I think that's an odd choice. But what I try to do and what I try to express to others as we approach these changes is to start by framing it through what is lost in the system. And this is where Wujo pushed back on me a little and said that I was framing it like, how is this bad for me? Or how is this good? Like, we need to look at it about how it's good or bad for me, Ryan Spain. I don't mean that. And I don't mean how it hurts me either. I mean what is lost. They're adding something to Arena. Is anything being taken away along with it? And in this case, I think what's being taken away is simply the expectation that we were going to get some place to use our rotated cards and that they wouldn't gouge us in the long term to enjoy that format. And Wizards can do whatever they want, but I just encourage, like, put the pitchforks down, put the torches down, and let's figure out how to assess the thing and then how to communicate to Wizards to get them to change it if we don't like what we're seeing. And I think I just encourage people to leave rage out of their communications around game making decisions, because it's just counterproductive. And so I'm really just trying to get people to get a balanced mindset as they head into, what the hell, Wizards? Yeah, and Siratemi says there's really no justification for that, to be honest, outside of someone trying to greed money. Well, let's think about what their goals were. Let me first talk about something I didn't talk about in any of my other videos on this, and that is the real challenges Wizards faces with an eternal format. Wizards exists and Magic continues because of the power of new cards. By power, I mean the powerful allure, not their power level, but the powerful attraction of new cards and standard rotation. It's really easy to continue this games as a service, new sets, when you get to chop off the end and make people engage in the new stuff. Modern, as popular as it is certainly I did, and I know others in the building when I was there regarded Modern as a bit of a Frankenstein's monster for Wizards, because Modern and Eternal formats let people opt out of standard upkeep. It's a huge problem. It's a huge financial problem. So when you talk about their decisions here as being greed based, I get it, and they are greed based, but it is not like arbitrarily greed based. It's greed based around them trying to solve a very real problem of creating meaningful play opportunities for rotated cards, but maintaining the sanctity and the focus of Arena and Magic on Standard. It's got to be focused on the new cards, or nobody at that building gets paid and the game goes away entirely, right? So the challenge of saying, okay, we need to let you have something meaningful to do with these old cards, but we need to keep stuff driven towards Standard. It's pretty clear to me that this is their shot at that, by saying like, hey, we're going to make it a lot more friction on participating in this old format, because we really want to keep the focus on Standard. Because if we don't, if we make them the same, and this is especially in a world like, you know, in paper you have the secondary market jockeying cards values and making stuff less or more valuable. And so in the secondary, like, Modern versus Standard for paper players is like, well, I can keep paying 250, you know, I can keep paying some amount of time to keep up with some amount of money to keep up with Standard, or I can pay like 4x that once, get a great Modern deck, and basically be done. Like, sometimes I might have to update it, but basically I'm done, right? And that's a huge problem monetarily for Wizards, because someone does the math and goes like, well, yes, a Modern deck is 4x the cost of a Standard deck, but if I buy it now, I'm done. Whereas I got to keep buying and buying and buying and buying and buying and buying Standard decks, right? If Modern decks were exactly the same price as Standard decks, oh my God, Standard would be in huge trouble. Everybody would be running away from Standard and playing Modern. And that's what they're seeing about what's coming on Arena. And they're really trying to avoid the introduction of Historic just killing Standard on Arena, because everybody just chooses to instead jump into and invest in, you know, in Historic, and thus never have to invest in any resource spend again on Arena. So I know that it feels bad. I know that it seems weird, and I know that it seems like just a money grab, but I can tell you that it is a real effort on Wizards' part to solve the very tricky puzzle of how to support an eternal format alongside of a rotating format without just killing the rotating format when your secondary market, when the secondary market of this platform doesn't differentiate between the cost of those cards. So, Siratemi, so now I'll take some thoughts on that. And those are the two things I wanted to get across today. Mainly that I'm not telling anybody that their choice is great or not great, or how to feel about it. I'm trying to help people first control your emotions so that you're remembering that you're not actually losing that much. Basically, this is this store that you go to called MTG Arena is offering you a new product called Classic, and you can say, yeah, I'm in, or not Classic, Historic, and you're either in on it, you can buy it or not. But the thing I really want to communicate to Wizards is how bad it feels now to face rotation, and to be, because the thing that I have lost, the thing that is being taken away from all of us was the sense that we could hit rotation and worry about what we're going to do with the past of Magic later, because we've been told that these wild cards are are good for all the cards in the system. So it makes it sad for me, and I'm starting to feel it heavily on the free-to-play account, where I do enjoy Constructed enough that, like, it's nice to get the cards you want, but they're not giving me the right incentives with this to do it, and it feels badly. And ultimately, we're all going to vote with our money and our time. And the other thing I keep trying to drive home is that when you do communicate, and you should communicate to Wizards about how you feel, you can do it through at Wizards Help on, I think there's an underscore, at Wizards _help on Twitter. You can give some feedback or whatever. But basically, if people are trying to play what's cheaper and they decide that that this format is going to be that, then they would gravitate towards that. So strangely, yes, it looks like they're almost shooting themselves in their foot by saying, here's this new format we've created, don't play in it. But it is kind of the message. It is actually kind of the message that they're going for, I think, because they really want to make people stay in standard for the long-term health of Arena. But you can't make people stay in standard unless you create a value proposition that creates that incentive. So they're trying to incentivize people to stay in standard because eternal formats are such a problem child, but at the same time, we need an eternal format, or else what are we doing with these cards? So they're trying to have it both ways, but the net result is that it feels bad. And when you communicate to Wizards about it, communicate from a standpoint of, this is how this makes me feel. Don't tell them what to do. If you tell companies and designers and etc., do this, you're probably wasting your time and are not going to get great traction. But if you tell them how the experience of their plan system makes you feel and where your pain is, explain to Wizards where your pain is, you might actually get somewhere. So I'll take a couple questions on this here. I have not been following chat. If you've written something and it's flowed by on the screen, I'm not going to go searching, so I'm just going to start clean slate. If you have something to say to me now or a question to ask about all that, say so now, and I'll start taking comments as we go here before I wrap up. James feels we've lost some trust that Arena prices would be constant. Well, I'm sure I bet in the agreements and whatever that we agree that stuff might change, but I agree that, economy tweaks are a big deal. Fenor asks, do you think that there's any merit to the theory that WotC intentionally pushes hardline economy decisions with the expectation that they'll get away with a favorable compromise after the backlash? Oh, this is the John Laux thing. I mean, John was a little more explicit about it, but I've said the same basic thing here. I don't know what John's exact quote was, but I'll say this. The people on the finance, I'll try to say it again. The people working on the Arena economy and the people working on economic decisions at Wizards genuinely want to get it right the first time. They're aiming for a target, but generally you also get to places where you need to decide are we going to make that 6 or 7? Like, oh, we did the math and the correct is like 6.543 tickets or whatever. And you decide, well, are you going to make it more expensive or less expensive? And yes, in those cases, you absolutely break towards the more expensive thing, knowing that you can retract it later. I haven't seen John's exact quote, but I imagine he implies more that it's like their baseline strategy, that like they're looking, that their whole, it's like the product plan is to aim way high and ratchet it down after Revolt. I don't think that's true as much as they try to aim correctly, but leaning high so that they have room to go down instead of realizing they need to go up. So that's what I would say about that question. Do you have any ideas of a better strategy to solve the problem of a non-rotating format? I think I'm going to not answer that right now, Miller. Like, the answer is not off the top of the head. The answer is it's a really tough problem, and but I think ultimately, I'll say this: I think the answer lies in making aspirational play still go through standard, because ultimately, if you are required to be good at standard for aspirational play meaning like making it to Mythic Championships and etc. If the road to Mythic Championships is on standard, then it's going to continue to be the main focus. What happens though is you get really, like, again, to go back to the modern example, we didn't ever, while I was at WotC, want to do modern Pro Tours, but at the same time, if you introduce a format but don't have it compete at the highest levels, then you're saying it's not a super real format. And I think that's probably, so one of my big questions about this format is, are opportunities to qualify for Mythic Championships going to go through this format? Are they going to go through historic formats on Arena? Because if they suddenly make historic critical to aspirational play and they keep this wildcard conversion rate up, I will maybe go sharpen a pitchfork myself, because that would be really rough to basically say, okay, we've told you this is how it's going to be, but now if you want to compete on this system, the wild cards are going to cost more. So I'm worried about that a little bit, but we'll see. They said we would have plenty of time to craft stuff before the price increase, so wait and see seems like a good idea. Yeah, that was my final advice in my other video. Don't craft anything desperately yet. Let's make sure that they are sticking with this plan before you do anything to avoid rotation price increases. Are we disagreeing, Siratemi? I don't, because Siratemi says, yes, they do. Every big company does it. Every company would rather push out what they can get away with up to the point of revolt, and then they ask for forgiveness. But yes, but that just means like every company is trying to win capitalism and get the most return on their time and investments that they can. Not that the tactics that Wizards is using right now are the best. GMJ says, I think this hurts mostly because we are all under the assumption that the non-rotating format would be healthy and valuable format, and so our old cards were still valuable. If Historic fails to get a good player base, then we lose all of our rotated cards. That's an interesting point, but they also have announced that they are going to bring Brawl to Arena, and I think that Brawl on Arena could have the effect of jump-starting that format back into relevance. And the interesting thing about Brawl as an alternative to getting into Historic with your old cards is you only need one. So one thing to think about is that Brawl is coming, and maybe instead of crafting up to 4 copies of whatever rare or mythic to participate in Historic, you may want to consider participating in Brawl with your old cards. Yeah, great God. Should you use wild cards on things that are going to be Historic before they go up in price? I don't know. Do you want to play Historic? Maybe you want to save those wild cards to get the latest standard stuff this fall. It depends on what you want to do. But the fact that they're making this tension in our brains doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good that I now feel like there's a wild card gun to my head that is rotation, and that I have all these decisions to make at rotation that I didn't think I had to make before. And that is kind of a bummer. All right, I'm going to take a look here. Let's see. Guess that. Tron asks, do you think they are focusing less on limited for championships now due to not as many viewers as modern or standard, or because they don't have human drafting? Oh, as a function of competitive play on Arena, I think it's a little of both. I think largely constructed formats are way better viewership numbers in competitive Magic than limited. And as inauthentic limited Magic, it's going to turn off a lot of viewers who otherwise would turn in to watch coverage of limited Magic. So I think it's both. Yeah, that's another feel bad about it, James, that is worth communicating to Wizards. That James says, I don't want to craft any cards for Historic, but worry that they'll add some other format to Arena in the future that I'll want Historic cards for, so I'm forced to guess what I might want now or wait and pay double. That's the real feel, right? Like, the feedback of, this feels awful because we don't know what you're going to do, we don't know what you're going to offer, we don't know what's going to be in Historic. They're going to add cards from the history of Magic into this format. We don't even know what they are yet. And how are we supposed to know what to craft for this format when we don't know what is in the format? And how are we supposed to craft before rotation when we have no idea what Wizards is going to do with the game in the future? So that's the type of feeling that is great to communicate to Wizards, because it really lets them know where the pain points are. Oh, Brawl was standard only. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Well, then that's still though my I guess one of my solutions to Wizards would be Brawl wasn't that successful anyway. Make historic Brawl on Arena. Yeah, sorry, that's true. I forgot that Brawl was intended as a standard format, but I think they could expand that. Basically, though, if they made some casual Commander-style format on Arena, I think that would go a long way toward people finding value in their old cards, but the problem is not finding 4x value. And that's one of the things we discussed. I know before I left, we had been talking about Brawl as the big selling point for how to handle rotation. But the trouble with a commander-like Brawl or an historic Brawl for rotation is that then you've still made 3 of 4 copies worthless, right? If 3 of your 4 copies are worthless, you're still feeling pretty badly about that. Yeah, I think I think we'll see something. Yeah, Brawl is rotating for the same reason that Standard rotates, but they could make a non-rotating Brawl for the same reason that they're making a non-rotating, well, Standard. You know, they're making a new non-rotating format. So, all right, I think I'm going to leave that for the discussion today. Got some great comments on YouTube videos that have been talking about this, so I'm going to keep talking about it as we try to sort it all out, but that's where I'm at. Will they ever have wildcard sales? Historic cards are 1-for-1 this week only, possibly, but then if they do that, you're just going to camp on your wild cards waiting for a sale, right? But maybe they will. That could be a way to mitigate it a little bit. But then you get cucumber grape problems there. It's like, fine, WotC, I'll pay double wild cards for your cucumbers, and then they say, oh, it's a 1-for-1, it's grape day, and it's like, wait, I'm out of wild cards, I should have saved them. So I think the trouble with offering sales is that you just also risk making the people who spent angry. So it's tough. All right, thank you for hanging out today, and we'll talk to you about this topic again in the future, I'm sure. Say goodbye to YouTube. See ya.